Hey guys, it's QuickyBaby and welcome back to another QuickTank review. This time we are looking at the WZ-111 Model 1.4. I'm going to be calling it the 111 in this tank review. I hope you'll understand that. This is an absolute beast of a tank. It's a tier 9 Chinese heavy that is fast. It's got pretty darn good frontal armor. It has 130mm, which has ridiculous DPM, at least compared to a tank such as the E75. I absolutely adore this vehicle, and I've been having some of the best results that I've ever had in World of Tanks using it. I've got multiple gameplays coming up, so stay tuned after I quickly review the stats of the tank. And if you have no interest in this vehicle, then I'll let you know exactly how you can take them out on the battlefield effectively. I'd like to firstly highlight that the 111 can be a very expensive tank to research. The turret is 24,000 and there is a gun that is only used on the 111, this 130mm. This gun, in my opinion, is not optional and it completely transforms the way that the 111 works. It does cost 66,000 experience to research this gun, and it changes the tank from using that same 100mm that used on the 110 with fairly low alpha damage for a heavy tank of high tier of 8 and 9, into an absolute monster with 490 alpha damage, much like the E75. But I digress, I'm getting ahead of myself with the gun review. This tank has got 1,850 hit points. It's quite light, it only weighs just over 45 tons. What that means is you really should not be ramming very many vehicles in this tank, unless they are light or medium vehicles. The tank, however, does get a rather meaty engine, a 600 brake horsepower engine, which allows it to shift around with a fairly healthy horsepower to ton ratio, and even keep up to the top speed of this tank, which is a massive 50 kilometers an hour. Now, the traverse speed of the tank is 28 degrees, which is kind of underwhelming. It would be absolutely amazing if this had sort of 32, 34 degrees of track traverse, as it would really allow you to make use of that top speed limit, especially when going around corners. Nevertheless, to all intents and purposes, the WZ-111 is more of a medium tank with regards to its speed than a heavy tank, and it's one of the main strengths of this vehicle and why I have absolutely fallen in love with it. Now, the frontal armor of this tank I will look at in more detail in What Tank Viewer shortly. On paper, it would presume that there was 120 on the front, 80 on the side and 60 on the rear, and the turret's 230 on the front, 120 on the side, and 60 on the rear. However, really, with all the mobility that this tank has, you wouldn't expect it to have 120mm of all-purpose armor on the front. And the following analysis in What Tank Viewer will show you exactly where you need to shoot the 111 to take it out effectively. So here is the 111, and here we see a key of the armor values of the tank. Looking at the frontal hull armor initially, we can see that the upper plate is 120mm. And really, with the angling of this armor, it is very, very, very hard for you to penetrate the upper plate of this tank. And you'd really have to be a fool to, because as we can see here, the lower plate is 80mm, and the angling on it is much, much, much worse than the upper plate. This lower plate is your ticket to taking out the 111 with any vehicle that could possibly meet it under regular matchmaking conditions. What that means is that if you're driving a 111, you really need to angle your frontal armor even when you're engaging such tanks as, for example, a Comet, a tier 7 medium. If you give him your lower plate flat on, then he's easily able to penetrate it. You really need to angle your armor to try and make it a lot more tricky for him to do so. One thing that can be frustrating in the 111 is if you do over-angle your armor, and they manage to break through your 20mm of track armor. If I just hide the tracks view, you can see that this side bar of 80mm is not only on the front, it's all the way down the side. What that means is that you can quite easily take off the tracks and also damage the chassis if you aim here on the 111, keeping it in place and almost guaranteeing yourself to do lots of damage to this tank as long as you have roughly about 120mm plus of penetration. We can see that the side armor of the 111 with regards to the hull is not brilliant, although there is a bar of 30mm of spaced armor, and behind that is still the 80mm. What that means is that when you're engaging a 111 from the side, you should try and avoid shooting this area of spaced armor, and either shoot above it, or preferably just shoot between the tracks where it's 80, 80, 80 and a nice easy shot. And the back of the tank is 60mm, which makes it fairly hard to penetrate with HE ammunition, at least compared to the T125, which I last reviewed. But the back of the turret is large and flat and easily penetrated from most angles. Now let's look at the turret armor. Interestingly, the turret only has 230mm down the side here. If we hide the spaced armor for a second, we can see there's 150mm bar directly around here. You do have an absolute blob of spaced armor on the front of this vehicle. It's 250mm surrounding the gun. And even if you do penetrate that 250mm, there's still a large rectangle which does have that 150mm behind that spaced armor. This means that if you want to penetrate the 111 through the gun mantlet, you want to aim just to the left of the gun while you're facing it. That means that you're only going to have to break through, well, only going to have to break through that 250mm of spaced armor, where you'll be able to shoot this hole in the armor, so to say, to the left of the gun, which is larger to the left than the right. We can see that the top of the tank, there is this area of 100mm of armor. This is a bit like the IS-3 turret, meaning that the top of this tank does get penetrated if you're able to shoot it flush with fairly high penetration guns. One thing that is annoying is that this tank has got some very prominent cupolas that only have, well, only 150mm thick. This means that frequently when you're engaging a 111, you can take advantage of these, and they are quite obvious. They can allow you to shoot here and here for reliable damage with, say, 200mm plus of penetration. When we're looking at the side of the turret, it's 120 on either side, much like the upper plate of the hull armor. Overall, the 111 has surprisingly good armor considering the speed of the vehicle. With such exceptional mobility, you would think that the armor might be absolutely garbage. And while that is actually true in some places, such as this lower plate, as well as the side and the rear armor of the tank, this frontal plate and most of the turret armor is actually rather good. My recommendation to you is to try and get the side and the rear of the 111, and if that's not possible, just keep shooting it in the lower plate, and if for some reason you can't shoot it in the lower plate, try and hit its cupolas. That means that when you're driving a 111, you want to do everything that you can to try and hide your lower plate, hopefully behind a little ridgeline or an object such as a rock. And if you see your enemies shooting at your cupolas, you need to keep your tank moving to try and make them as hard a target as possible to hit. So far you've learned that the 111 is a very fast tank with quite capable armor for its tier. So if you thought that it was going to get a bad gun, you'd be terribly mistaken. This 130mm caliber gun fires 4.29 rounds a minute with 244mm of penetration. It can fire heat ammunition which has got 340mm of penetration. And its HE ammo is capable of engaging quite a few targets with 65mm of penetration. Now the alpha damage is 490 with the AP and 640 with the HE. Now the accuracy of this tank has got to be one of the worst things about it. 0.4 accuracy, it's rather bad. And it's definitely one of the downsides of this 130mm, and if the accuracy was better, it would be really overpowered. One thing that's quite nice is that the tank only has 2.9 second aim time, while many guns of this caliber do generally have that kind of 3.4 second aim time. The best gun to compare this to is the E75's 128mm, and you can see that the guns are remarkably comparable. The E75 has a slight accuracy advantage, while the aim times are the same. But this is where the 111 shines through. Look at this rate of fire difference. Just to compare this, the E75 is on the left and the 111 is on the right. And the DPM is 230 higher. Having this 12% DPM advantage over the E75 it's very large indeed. And it makes trading with certain tanks a lot easier. Nevertheless, the Chinese 111 does only get 5 degrees of gun depression, which can be very awkward indeed considering the E75 gets 8 degrees of gun depression. This means that there are far fewer locations that you can use the 111 to go hull down in compared to the E75. Although considering that the tank is very low profile, it does make face-hugging certain tanks a lot easier. Really, I feel that the 111 is in direct competition with the E75, especially considering the changes that we saw to the E75 in the last couple of patches. And realistically, what you need to know is that the 111 is a faster, more lightly armored, higher DPM vehicle than the E75. And you'll know how highly I value the E75. And when someone's offering you a tank which is fairly comparable in performance with some things worse and quite a few things much better, then you'll start to get excited about the 111, probably as much as I am. Looking at the final stats of the tank, the turret traverse is 26 degrees, which is not brilliant, and the view range is a very standard 400 meters. So that's quite enough theory crafting. Let's take a look at how it performs in some gameplay. So here we go, we're playing on Mountain Pass. I'm initially going to show you about the speed capabilities of the 111. Here we see a Type 59, one of the better Tier 8 premium tanks. And it is a medium vehicle, and it truly is a medium. Now while the Type 59 doesn't have the top medium maneuverability, it's still a medium tank, and it's not a terribly slow one. I'm going to show you how the 111, our Tier 9 Chinese heavy tank, can keep up with a Tier 8 medium. And what that can allow you to achieve. Now if you're in an E75, you couldn't be doing this. Firstly, you're limited to 40 kilometers an hour. And next, you would lose so much speed along these medium terrain resistance. You'd probably be going along at between 30 and 35. However, our 111 has been going along at about an average of 45 kilometers an hour, which means that we get here in time to one-hit one of the light tanks and cause the other one to fall back from his position where he was going to counter this AMX 1375 below us. It was also allowed us to get into a nice aggressive early position to catch this Super Pershing off guard. Unfortunately, our shell went a little high and left there. We were unable to aim it fully, and I think I should have given more lead to the right. Next, we're aiming for the cheeks of the Super Pershing. Unfortunately, the shell goes a little left again. It gets absorbed into that great spaced armor. I should have probably aimed for the top of the tank there. And this is where you can see the .4 accuracy of the 111. I didn't aim that one, but at least I aimed at his cupolas on top of his tank that time. But this .4 accuracy derps the shell. So I think those were 3 absorbs on the Super Pershing there. You're kind of going to have to get used to that in the 111. With .4 accuracy, you're just going to have to keep using that extraordinary rate of fire that the tank has to keep slinging your shells at your opponent and try and aim them the best you can. Here we see a VK4502B. Didn't quite have a chance there, so we're going to aim for his cupola. Hey, that one flew true, and 503 damage done. Now, I know there's an IS-3 on my flank, but he has to come around the corner a hell of a long way, and he'll probably choose to kill the Type 59. We're unable to penetrate him, but he's also unable to penetrate us. He tried to shoot straight at our mantlet, and the shell got absorbed. We're going to come back and have another go at him. We aim for his cupola. Aiming. Fully aimed. Ba-ding. And there's a Tier 9 German heavy tank out of the game. Oh, that T-34 stung us there. But our rate of fire is good enough, and our alpha damage is high enough to hit him a hell of a lot harder. So we can see there a shot right into the lower plate. I was quite lucky to not take fuel tank damage from that shot, to be honest with you. T-44. Okay. This is why I'm showing you this replay. .4 accuracy, totally whiffed underneath the T-44. And it can be very frustrating in the 111. However, we have the rate of fire. And there we had the RNG. Now, he was... T-44 hits us probably in the lower plate again. Yep, right in the lower plate. Tier 8 medium tanks are able to penetrate the 111 very easily in the lower plate. I decide that I don't want this IS-3 to have my flank any longer. He's killed the Type 59 and he was starting to work the SD-1. So I'm coming over here to hopefully finish him off. Oh well, I take the shot and then the artillery gets the kill. Such is life. It's just to see where he shot us again. Yep, right in the lower plate. I think you're starting to see a pattern here. So as I was mentioning, this gun with .4 accuracy and a great rate of fire means you just have to keep slinging your shells at the target. Now I have a decision here. soon. I can see that the enemies are starting to A, push this bridge, and B, make their way into our base. And I'm literally looking left, right. I decide that that Super Pershing is not worth going after. He's got an IS-8 supporting him, and if I do that, then frankly I'm going to lose the game because they're going to take our base. So I decide to let go of that easy damage I would have had on the Super Pershing. And instead go after this T-34. And this guy's full health. Now that's a high roll. 555. I'm using this mound to hide my lower plate. With my lower plate more or less hidden, my armor is supreme in the 111. Now I saw that the T-34 made a kill there on the KV-2. I need to keep progressing towards the base because our base is now under attack. We put another meaty shell into him, and that's another high roll. 547. We're reloaded again. He misses us, and we just destroy that T-34 so easily. And really, with my lower plate hidden, he would have to shoot the cupolas on my tank to be able to penetrate us. Reliably, that is. Of course, he might be able to penetrate our upper plate if he got very lucky. But generally, what you need to consider is the only thing you really need to hide is your lower plate. Okay, I can see this T-44 coming around this corner, but I'm also worried about the fact that the base is being capped. I still want to angle in here so I have a good opportunity to ambush this T-44. We pre-aim on the corner, we come round at a reasonable rate. He's no longer there. I get spotted and I'm going, what? How did I manage to get spotted? And wow, he was there. Again, he puts a shot into our lower plate, and you can argue that I overaimed that. That's the one that he just put in. Frankly, I'm quite lucky that this AT-15 has done a sterling job at defending. Well played to that AT-15. We pick up our 5th kill, and we have the speed to be able to get back to the base. Now I've decided to load a heat round. Why? Because we're engaging an E-75. E-75 with its fantastic frontal armor, and the fact that this shot really counts. It really does. The enemies are on 80% cap, they win in 10 seconds. And it ended up being a completely unnecessary heat shell. So what we see here is the E-75 is coming after us, thinking that our reload is pretty bad. We're just going to keep kiting him back and back and back. The AT-15 pops over the hill and finishes him off because he was tunnel visioning so much on me. I know I can take at least one shell from the Tiger II, so I come around the corner fairly recklessly just to finish him off. We got a little unlucky with our roll there. We could have one-hit that Tiger II, I believe, but we didn't. And the AT-15, who did a fantastic job, let's see what his name is. Big shout out to you, Anuboro. Great job by you at defending the base, which allowed me enough time to make it back. Now! Oh, are we starting to see a pattern here about the 111 armor? Lower plate, lower plate, lower plate, lower plate. If you get shot in the lower plate in this tank, it will penetrate most of the time. However, the rest of the armor is incredibly bouncy. What this means is that it should be your goal to really hide that lower plate as much as possible. Now this is an interesting situation. We don't know how much health the enemy IS-8 is on. We can see that we have an IS-8 that's on 667. And that very brave AT-15 is pushing across as well. Now, if I was to just go in, maybe the IS-8 would get lucky on me and kill me, and that would leave an AT-15 and an IS-8 in an engagement that I would be out the game and I wouldn't feel in control of. Knowing that my ally in the IS-8 is capable of taking a hit, I allow him to go first so I can back him up. Keeping our eyes out here. The enemy IS-8 is to get an ambush shot off on us. It'll be very ugly. I really shouldn't have knocked down that tree there, and my ally shouldn't have knocked down that tree there as it gave away our position. Nevertheless, we're quite fortunate because the IS-8 is not quite in a position to engage us yet. I'm trying to support my ally without taking a shot myself. the enemy IS-8 got hit by ours. And the .4 accuracy of the 111 shows its ugly head once again. Now I know I could possibly shoot this guy again. I don't want to risk it right now. I don't want to give this guy my lower plate. Now unfortunately myself and my friend are one hit. And the enemy IS-8 definitely requires 2 hits. Still. Luckily for us, our AT-15 friend, who's in a very slow British tank destroyer, is making his way forwards as well. The IS-8 bounced a shot there. And we just keep slowly advancing. The idea is to close the distance to the enemy. I would far rather be up close to the opponent in the 111 than at a longer range. Unless I can hide my lower plate. My upper hull armor is better than that IS-8's, and he has a much more prominent beak on his tank. His lower plate is even more, is even worse than mine, and it makes me think that the 111 is very similar to an IS-8. Just does have this fantastic gun. And the lower plate is more easily hidden in my opinion than on the IS-8. And the upper plate's probably better as well. So I don't want to get shot in the cupolas here. Just waiting for this AT-15 to get into position. We're basically boring out the game. There's no point in dying and losing right now, and this is very strong strategic play to stop those kind of situations at the end where you see people getting Kolobanov's medals. Fair enough, this wouldn't be a Kolobanov's medal, but it would be an engagement which would be very easily won by him, 3 versus 1. So my ally makes his move, I come around the corner and plant one in him, thinking that the AT-15 will be able to finish him off. AT-15 fails to finish him. He aims back at me. I pull back behind the wreck because I know that he wants to kill me and not the AT-15. And I'm being very passive here, waiting for my opportunity when I see that he aims at my friend. There he's committed to aiming at my friend, and I can pop round and put a shot in. So, that was just a very strategic end to that game. You could argue that it was a bit boring. However, I would argue that it was kind of securing the victory. Why go in 1 versus 1 versus 1 at the end of the game? And there's nothing more annoying, I bet you this has happened to you guys, when you're dead and you watch your allies just go in 1 by 1 by 1 and feed a top tier tank with a rather good gun who has more health than all of your allies who have lost it all in the preceding fighting. So we basically turned it into the perfect engagement where we had 3 people versus the IS-8. He had more health than probably all of us combined at the beginning. We managed to whittle it down and still have 2 tanks left alive. This battle really showed you everything that you needed to know about the 111. I've highlighted how bad the lower plate is on this tank. I haven't quite showed how good the upper plate is, and hopefully I'm going to do that in the next replay. I've showed just how unreliable this 130mm is, but also how damn good it can be when it performs. You can take out tanks so quickly, so much quicker than what an E75 would with your, I think, 12% extra DPM, what we calculated. You better just pray to the RNG gods before your every shot, because it's not the most accurate. Anyway, let's move along and take a look at some more gameplay. So now we're playing on Ruinberg on Fire, or Ruinberg Smoldering. Oh well, let's not discuss about the intricacies of Ruinberg, or the fact that I just drove into that building. Let's focus on the matchup. And this is a lovely one really, half the enemy are tier 8 tanks, a few tier 9s with 3 tier 10s. I'm going to make my way into the town. Look at this beautiful lighting. Ah, much wow, much amaze. So we can see that an M103 and a VK4502A are making their way into the middle, and there's an Object 140 on the upper road. Now, hopefully in this replay, I'm going to show you the 111. It's got pretty good upper hull armor. I'm side-scraping on this location. I do realise that there is an Object 261 on the enemy team. But this position is still strong. Now, especially so now that you can shoot through vehicles, I believe. I believe that you can shoot through vehicles. I don't think they're a one-hit. Maybe they are. Oh, I fast-forwarded it far too quickly there. Here we see an IS-3, who bounces our shot and shoots us in the lower plate, killing our driver. Right, well, there was a bounce there, right on the side. Now we have a Lerva pushing us off into the middle. Thank you. We have a Super Pershing who has taken the spot that I would rather have. Tried to fire clutch there at the IS-3. It was not the best shot indeed. Much like our last replay, we haven't had a particularly great start to the game. However, now this is the position that we want. Chewed that T-34 right up. And unfortunately for us, a tank which has nearly no chance of penetrating those vehicles is taking an important position. Our shell went high and left, which meant that we were unable to hit the weak, and which means that we're unable to hit the lower, well, the mid plate of the T-34 there. I'm sorry, I'm getting a bit distracted with my commentary there, but literally, I have been pushed by this Lerva and this Super Pershing about 3 or 4 times. And it's very frustrating. You can see just how well our armor is doing when they're not shooting us in the lower plate. I'm quite worried about getting stung in the side. And also, I've had enough of that Super Pershing nudging me again and again and again. So I let him take the position. That's fine. You can have the position now, Mr. Super Pershing. We managed to whiz a shell over his turret still. I ask him kindly to fall back, because if he does, we're able to get some more effective shots here. Lovely side shot there on the IS-3's upper hull armor. And you can see that as soon as we started to hide our lower plate, we have had an absolute monster of a game with regards to the performance of our armor. And if only these people would not ram me in the side, that would be brilliant. I'm showing you this replay to show you what the 111 can do if given time to work, where it's able to hide its lower plate. Now we have a KV-4 in front of us. Beautiful. Unfortunately, we didn't aim our shell very well there. We should have aimed a much flatter part of his armor. And I'm unable to side scrape now because this T-34 has gone in front of us. And it looks like I blocked a shot there for his gun. I'm trying to indicate to him that the best bet is for him to not block me behind, so I can continue to shoot the opponents. I think he's taken the hint. And we can continue to use this position to hopefully dominate the enemy. We have a nice shot in the lower plate there, and you guys see first penetration on the top of the tank. Unfortunately, that position is very much like an IS-3, with regards to it being fairly weak. But still, it's far better to take your chances with them shooting your relatively small weak points on top of your hull. And even though we've got 0.4 accuracy, we can still pull off some snipes, as you can see. And that IS-8 has given his beak, and that's just lovely. So there's nothing insanely heroic about that fight there. I did deal with the fact that our friends were, were nudging us in the side over and over and over again, blocking our shots and so on and so forth. But it's okay. Alright. Now aiming for the lower plate on the E-100, we penetrate it. And we load a premium round now. This heat round will go through the C-100 like butter. And we do 568 damage to that E-100 with a very nice roll indeed. Now we have an M103. Don't quite have a shot on him. It looks like our artillery went down swinging because the M103 is now on very low health. So I'm quite worried about that T-54 behind us. If he gets a chance to unload down that alleyway, it's going to be very bad for us indeed. Also, I'm worried about the fact that the enemies have still got a 261 alive. That 261 can finish us off in one shot, really, if he manages to land a shot, and then lull on our whole deck. So we come round this corner at the M103. And unfortunately for us, our shot goes just right, and the enemy's on 1 health. But that allows the Super Pershing to pick up the kill. That lovely Super Pershing. Brilliant. So, hopefully... What? Another bounce right off the turret. Just look how bouncy this turret is. After that first shot that penned our lower plate, which has now gone away and killed our driver, we have bounced so many shots off the top of the armor, with the only one penetrating us, I believe, was this one. Oh, I'm sorry, I made you miss that Ferdinand kill. Apologies for that. But realistically, this replay, I'm just showing you the capabilities of the 111's armor. Now it's just a case of hunting down the remaining opponents. The T-54E1 just murdered the Lerva. He's still got 761 health left. So, I could have flanked around that way, and oh my god, there's a 261. Do-do-do-do-do. Oh! Okay, sometimes RNG does smile upon you. That was quite nice reactions there, and a nice roll as well. 510 damage. Taking out that Object 261 in one shot. And definitely put us more back into the game there. So this T-54E1 is now in a completely hidden location. And I feel that he must have either gone around here or around there. Wow, you don't really have to be Sherlock Holmes to think that. I'm rushing. And really, looking back on this was rather reckless. Look at where I am now. Effectively, if the T-54E1 had come out around this corner, he could have easily killed us in a clip. And then he might have gone on to finish this game off by himself. So that was actually a misplay, what I did there. But thankfully, it's not going to cost us our life. We side scrape our armor in. 1 into the tracks. 2 into the tracks. And 1 into the lower plate. So let's just pause that for just a second, because that was quite an important engagement. Showing you how you should angle your armor in your 111. If you angle more than this, you run a risk of him being able to go, well, I guess you could angle more a bit like this. This is slightly under-angled. I would have preferred it if I'd angled a bit more like this. That would have given more chance to absorb on the tracks. What we saw happen there is he was trying to hit our lower plate. Or he was maybe just trying to shoot in the side of the tracks to try and track us and also damage us. 2 shots were absorbed into the tracks out of his 4 clip. 3rd one went into there, and he decides to pull back. Which allows us to come around the corner. And Michael Hoffman, in the Super Pershing, manages to finish off the game. So let's just take a quick look at the post-game stats for both those games, because I forgot about them. So here are the results for the first game. We managed to pick up a Mastery Badge, a High Caliber Medal, and the Top Gun and the Defender. We made 70,000 credits that game. We spent 28,000 on the ammunition, including those 2 heat rounds that we fired. And our vehicle repair cost was just shy of 15,000. This means that even without the action payout for the event, we were still able to make 28,000 credits profit, as well as net just shy of 1,400 base experience, doing over 5,000 damage. Now the .4 accuracy of this tank still meant that we hit 18 out of 19 shells. But if you remember from that replay, We were aiming at weak points of tanks, and when we missed their weak points, we failed to penetrate them. And apart from that shot that you might remember on that T-44 that simply just went completely under the tank, the .4 accuracy on the 111 really did rear its ugly head. However, we also had a potential damage received of just shy of 3,400, and combining that with 108 base defense points, and traveling 3.8 kilometers, it really was a great replay to showcase the 111. You saw just how bad its lower plate was, you saw just how great the DPM output was on that T-34, and you saw that the tank has the mobility to get into positions that really can surprise its opponents, as well as have the mobility to get back and defend the base, faster than other tanks could. So in the next game, we got another high caliber medal. We got the Steel Wall medal this time and a Confederate. We did fire one dirty heat round, which meant that we had a 26,000 credit ammunition resupply cost. However, that means that even without the event payout, we would have still made 35 to 40,000 credits profit. This time the experience was higher, it was 1,456 base, and you could see the potential damage that we received was nearly 5,500. with 5,765 damage done by myself. We maintained a pretty good accuracy, even though we were being nudged by our friends quite a lot, and we did take some chancy shots. Really, this replay, I just wanted to show you just how good the 111 is with regards to its hull armor and its turret armor if you can hide its lower plate. The excellent performance of the 111 has allowed me to get some rather respectable stats in this tank. 68% wins, 1,200 average experience, nearly 3,000 damage on average per game. Also, something I'd like to highlight, 2 enemy vehicles spotted on average per game. That's about what I usually get with my medium tanks, and literally the speed of the 111 and that 400 meters view range does allow you to be able to get a lot of spotting done for your team. If you want to sacrifice a bit of your armor to be able to increase your speed and your DPM, then the 111 might be the tank for you. And if that doesn't sound like a good trade, then you're still probably better going for the ST1 or the E75. And I guess one of the questions is where does this tank fit in when you consider the kind of the M103 Conqueror performance? I'd say that overall, frontally, the 111 probably has better armor than the M103, at least with regards to its turret. And it's much better turret armor than the Conqueror. When you think that the speed is so much better, and its DPM, as we can see here, is very competitive with the M103. The M103 being here and the 111 being here, the DPMs are very comparable. And it's when we think about this that I start to understand why I've been doing pretty alright with the 111, and I think it's a fantastic tank overall. Anyway guys, I hope you've enjoyed this review or it's just been useful to you. If that's the case, please consider rating it down below. I'd really appreciate it and it'll really help me out. And why don't you let me know in the comments what you think about the 111? Is it one of your favorite tanks, or maybe that kind of lower plate weakness and the inconsistency in the gun has meant that it really just wasn't the tank for you? Anyway, as always, thank you so much for watching. You've been epic, and hopefully I'll see you soon.